We got the Wall Street Journal Associate Editor, John Bussey, Market Watcher Joe Fahmy, and Fox Business's Deirdre Bolton. Joe, to you and your sense of what you're seeing from the president, that I'm not blinking on this, I'm not giving ground on this. It's up to the Chinese, and he seems to believe he's coming from a position of strength and that it's going to go his way. What's your sense of this?
I think these are just negotiation tactics. I'd rather focus on what areas it's actually going to help if there are any tariffs. And specifically, as a market watcher, I'm seeing it in the small caps, and especially in the Russell 2000.
Because they're not as vulnerable.
Yeah, I think the small and mid caps, number one, domestic companies that are not as vulnerable to any tariff talks. Number two, accelerating earnings, not as affected by the strong dollar, and also a benefit of the corporate tax cuts, which will take a few quarters to kick in, but you can see it in the strength in the Russell 2000 versus the S&P, which is more affected in case some of these tariffs go through.
There is kind of like a weird but consistent pattern to this, isn't there, Deirdre? That the markets, when it looks like they're up in the ante, they tank.
Right.
But it's a short-lived tank, right? And I'm not smart enough to know where we'll be in 3 hours here, but one day hit, sometimes a 2-day hit. The Asian markets play out the same, just more magnified. But what do you make of that? Either the markets trust the cooler heads prevail, or they think the president's right, or what?
Well, I do think I'm going to agree with Joe, and that's certainly what we heard from Lloyd Blankfein at Goldman Sachs saying, listen, all of this muscle is part of the negotiation tactic. He even compared what's happening now with trade to the situation in North Korea as far as President Trump goes, just saying it's a lot of bluster. It's part of his process. And if you're an investor...
We should be clear, he wasn't endorsing, and he was just saying that it's part of the process.
But he seemed to be like a little bit more philosophical. But David Solomon, also of Goldman, saying, OK, that's fine, bluster's fine. But at some point, these trade tensions do actually affect clients, both in China and the U.S. They affect investments.
Right.
And so at some point, there will be a longer term effect. But for the moment, a lot of these cooler heads think we're not there yet. And they seem to accept this as part of the process. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to see these 300-point sell-offs on the Dow when President Trump, instead of talking about $50 billion worth of tariffs, talked about $200 billion, right? The market sold off, and then to your point.
And he said another $200 billion, John, if the Chinese even think about matching that $200 billion. But where do you see this going?
Fasten your seatbelts. I mean, we're at the beginning of this, and the gauntlet's been tossed down. China says we're not going to back off. The U.S. says the same thing. He's now talking about possibly 10% on 400 billion in Chinese exports.
Which would virtually be their entire surplus.
Yes,
right?
That's right. A little bit more than. So I think we're at the beginning of this. There are no talks going on. It's not as if there are talks to solve these issues, underway. There's just positioning, like two sumo wrestlers at this point in the ring, kind of trying to get advantage on the next. That can have untold effects on markets. We just don't know yet. If China does, in fact, crimp back imports of whatever product you want to choose in the United States, agricultural or industrial, we don't know yet. That'll have an effect on those producers. And we're at the beginning of this also from the standpoint of actual decisions being made, not just on tariffs. And mind you, the president is listening to hardliners now in his administration, Peter Navarro and Lighthizer at the USTR. But June 30, we have a whole other issue, which is that the U.S. is going to announce rules on Chinese investment in U.S. technology zone because they feel the Chinese have been stealing. Yeah. They've been stealing our tech. It's kind of the
But I'm wondering, real quickly, Joe, is there a sense that you get that he is making progress in this regard? I'm switching to Europe now, and there's promise on the part of some of the prominent German auto manufacturers to dramatically cut tariffs there for American cars that come in. Now, of course, there's a number of hoops you go through there. Approval in Germany, approval then through the European Union, but that they're already, I wouldn't say blinking, but shifting.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the negotiation tactic. I mean, John might be right where this could just be the beginning, but I always say it's not the news, it's the market's reaction to the news.
Right.
And there's been a lot of political headlines where there's a quick knee-jerk reaction, but the markets are unaffected right now. So that's the markets, for now, telling you this might not be as big of a deal. At the end of the day, earnings and interest rates are what control the markets. And for the most part, interest rates are low and earnings are accelerating.
But here's a reason, Neil, to think that maybe it is a slightly bigger deal with China as opposed to Europe. Because in China, what they want is systemic change in the manner in which China conducts itself in the international trading environment. Lower subsidies or no subsidies for their companies from the government. Not swiping through cyber espionage secrets. No forced transfer of U.S. technology as the ticket into the game in China. Those are big decisions that they're asking of China. They're not just saying lower your tariffs. They're saying change your economy.
Although they'd be grateful probably if they got a fraction of that. Don't you think?
If you listen to Peter Navarro and others, they're saying we're in this, it's been a long time coming and we're in this for the long game, is their argument. But you may be right. Maybe they back off some of that.
In the end, it was tepid.
Very much so. Very much so. They got very little out of South Korea.